The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard my wife's voice drift through the garage window. Porter Kellor, 34 years old, fixing his truck at midnight because that's when the world finally shuts up enough for a man to think. But tonight, thinking was the last thing I wanted to do. "I'm done being a wife, Brooks. Deal with it." Seren's voice carried that same ice-cold tone she used when firing employees at her law firm, except this time, she was firing me. I crouched behind my Ford's open hood, engine parts scattered across the workbench like pieces of a puzzle I'd never solve. The garage light cast long shadows as I listened to my marriage crumble through a phone conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. "Porter's clueless," she continued. "He thinks I'm working late again. God, how did I ever marry someone so ordinary?" Ordinary. That word hit harder than any punch I'd taken at Murphy's boxing gym. Ordinary Porter Kellor, the mechanic who somehow convinced the brilliant lawyer to marry him 6 years ago. Ordinary Porter, who signed that prenuptial agreement her father shoved across the mahogany table like a loaded weapon. Funny thing about that prenup, though. Seren's old man, the legendary attorney William Trenwall, had been so eager to protect his precious daughter's assets that he'd made one tiny mistake. The infidelity clause worked both ways. I pressed my ear closer to the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Meet me at the Riverside Inn tomorrow, room 237. And Brooks, bring that thing we talked about." The line went quiet. I heard her heels clicking across the kitchen floor above, probably heading to the wine cabinet. Seren always reached for her expensive Chardonnay when she was planning something. I wiped my hands on an old rag, mind racing. The Riverside Inn, room 237. Brooks Carvin, the pretty boy personal trainer from Elite Fitness, the same Brooks who'd been helping my wife with her workout routine for the past 3 months. The pieces clicked together like a perfectly tuned engine. The late nights at the office, the new lingerie I'd found in the laundry, the way she'd started looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her designer shoes. But here's the thing about being ordinary. People underestimate you. They forget you're watching. They forget you're listening. And they definitely forget you know how to read legal documents. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Time to start documenting everything. Because if Seren Kellor wanted to play games, she was about to learn that this ordinary mechanic had been studying the rulebook. The garage door creaked as a cold October wind swept through. I glanced at the calendar hanging above my toolbox, October 15th. Circled in red ink was our 6th wedding anniversary, just 2 weeks away. Perfect timing. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, each step deliberate and quiet. Seren was already asleep, or pretending to be, her blonde hair spread across the silk pillowcase like spilled champagne. She looked peaceful, innocent. The irony wasn't lost on me. I slipped into the bathroom and started my real work. Seren's phone was charging on the nightstand, but she'd changed her passcode last month, claimed it was for security purposes at the firm. Right. But she'd forgotten about our shared cloud account, the one we'd set up for family photos and important documents, the one that automatically synced her text messages to my tablet. I opened the tablet and scrolled through months of conversations. My stomach twisted as I read message after message between my wife and Brooks Carvin. The planning, the lies, the casual cruelty of their conversations about me. "Porter's working late again," one message read. "Perfect excuse for dinner at your place." "He's so trusting," Brooks had replied. "Almost feel bad for the guy." "Don't," Seren had written back. "He knew what he was getting into when he married up." Married up. Like I was some charity case she'd taken pity on. I screenshotted everything, my hands steady, despite the rage building in my chest. Every hotel receipt, every dinner reservation, every intimate detail of their affair, documented and saved. The bathroom mirror reflected a man I barely recognized. 6 years of marriage had softened my edges, made me comfortable, complacent. But underneath the suburban husband exterior, the old Porter was still there. the kid who'd fought his way out of the trailer park, the teenager who'd learned that sometimes you have to hit back twice as hard to make bullies think twice. Seren stirred in the bed, mumbling something in her sleep. I watched her for a moment, remembering the woman I'd fallen in love with, the brilliant law student who'd laughed at my jokes and claimed she didn't care about money or status. That woman was gone, had been gone for a long time, probably. I'd just been too ordinary to notice. I closed the tablet and returned to bed, lying next to my wife in the darkness. She smelled like expensive perfume and betrayal. Tomorrow, I'd start planning my response. But tonight, I let myself feel the weight of 6 years crumbling into dust. Tomorrow, Seren Kellor would learn that ordinary men can be extraordinarily dangerous when pushed too far. The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. In 6 hours, she'd wake up and pretend to love me over coffee and toast. She'd kiss my cheek and tell me she'd be working late again, and I'd smile and nod and continue being ordinary, until I wasn't. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. 3 days later, I sat across from Soren Valden in his cluttered downtown office, watching him flip through the evidence I'd compiled. Soren looked like a lawyer from a noir film, rumpled suit, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of cynical smile that suggested he'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Well, Porter," he said, leaning back in his squeaky chair, "your wife certainly didn't waste time covering her tracks." I'd found Soren through Murphy, my boxing coach. "You need a street fighter in a suit," Murphy had told me. "Valden's your guy. He specializes in taking down rich people who think they're untouchable." "How bad is it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Soren adjusted his glasses and pulled out the prenuptial agreement. "Normally, I'd say you're screwed. Your wife's family has money, connections, and one of the best legal teams in the state, but—" He tapped the document with his pen. "This infidelity clause is beautiful. Ironclad. If we can prove she's cheating, she forfeits everything." "Everything?" "House, cars, joint accounts, even her precious art collection. Your father-in-law was so worried about protecting his daughter that he created a nuclear option, and she just handed you the launch codes." I slid a flash drive across his desk. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos, credit card statements, 3 months' worth. Soren plugged the drive into his laptop and whistled low. "This is thorough, almost obsessively so. I'm a mechanic. I pay attention to details." "Good thing." He scrolled through the files, his smile growing wider. "The Riverside Inn, Romano's restaurant, that expensive spa downtown. She's been financing this affair with joint account money. What's our next move?" Soren closed the laptop and leaned forward. "We freeze the accounts. Today, before she realizes what's happening. Then we file for divorce and invoke the infidelity clause." "How long do we have?" "Once we freeze the accounts, she'll know something's up. Maybe 48 hours before she lawyers up with Daddy's firm." I stood to leave, but Soren held up a hand. "Porter, I have to ask, what's your end game here? Because what you're describing sounds like total warfare." I thought about Serene's voice through the garage window, the casual cruelty in her text messages, the way she'd looked at me that morning over breakfast, lying with every breath. "She wants to destroy me quietly," I said. "I want to destroy her loudly." Soren's grin turned predatory. "Now you're speaking my language." That afternoon, I drove to Elite Fitness. The gym was a temple to vanity, all chrome and mirrors and people who'd never worked a real day in their lives. I found Brooks Carvin in the free weights section, admiring himself between sets. Brooks looked exactly like what he was, a pretty boy who'd coasted through life on good genetics and charm, tall, artificially tanned, with the kind of sculpted muscles that came from hours of narcissistic self-worship. Brooks Carvin? I approached with my friendliest smile. He turned, confusion flickering across his perfect features. Yeah? Porter Kellor, Seren's husband. The color drained from his face like water from a broken sink. Oh, hey man, Relax, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. Just wanted to thank you for helping my wife with her fitness goals. She's been coming home so energized lately. Brooks fumbled with his water bottle. Yeah, well, she's a dedicated client. I bet she is. I picked up one of his dumbbells, testing the weight. 40 pounds, nice. I usually work with 60, but I guess we all have different strengths. The insult hit home. Brooks straightened, his ego kicking in. Actually, I usually go heavier. This is just a warm-up. Sure it is. I set the weight down and smiled. Well, I should let you get back to your warm-up. Oh, and Brooks, next time you see my wife, tell her I said hello. I walked away, leaving him standing there with his mouth hanging open. In the parking lot, I paused next to his red Corvette, the kind of car a man buys when he's compensating for something. The passenger side mirror was held on by a single loose bolt. One quick twist with my multi-tool, and the mirror clattered to the asphalt. Oops, I muttered, walking to my truck. My phone buzzed as I drove home. A text from Seren. Working late again, don't wait up. I typed back, no problem, love you too. The lies came so easily now. Maybe I was learning from the best. At home, I opened a beer and sat in my garage, surrounded by the tools of my trade. Everything had its place here. Everything made sense, unlike my marriage, which had become a complex machine with too many broken parts to fix. My phone rang. Seren. It's done, he said. Accounts are frozen as of 5 p.m. She'll find out tomorrow morning when her credit card gets declined. And then? Then we see what kind of person your wife really is when she's cornered. I hung up and finished my beer, listening to the October wind rattle the garage door. Tomorrow, Seren would wake up to a very different world, a world where being ordinary didn't mean being powerless, a world where Porter Kellor finally stopped playing defense. Seren discovered the frozen accounts at 8:47 a.m. while trying to buy coffee at her favorite downtown cafe. I know the exact time because I was sitting 3 tables away, watching her face transform from confusion to rage as her platinum card was declined. She tried 2 more cards before the barista, a college kid with purple hair and infinite patience, suggested she call her bank. Seren's voice carried across the cafe as she spoke to customer service, each word sharper than the last. What do you mean frozen? On whose authority? I want to speak to your supervisor immediately. I sipped my black coffee and pretended to read the newspaper while she stormed out, phone pressed to her ear like a weapon. Through the window, I watched her pace the sidewalk, probably calling her father. My own phone buzzed. A text from her. We need to talk. Now. I typed back, at work, can it wait? No. 20 minutes later, she burst into Murphy's boxing gym like an avenging angel in a $1,000 suit. The contrast was striking, Seren's polished perfection against the gym's honest sweat and worn equipment. Every conversation stopped as she clicked across the concrete floor in her designer heels. Porter! Her voice echoed off the cinderblock walls. What did you do? I was wrapping my hands for a session with the heavy bag, taking my time with each loop of tape. Morning, honey. You're up early for someone who worked so late. Don't play games with me. The accounts are frozen pending a legal review. I flexed my fingers, testing the wrap. Funny thing about joint accounts. Takes both parties to unfreeze them. Murphy appeared beside us, a mountain of a man with cauliflower ears and knowing eyes. Everything okay here, Porter? Fine, Murphy. Just having a conversation with my wife. Seren's gaze darted between us, probably calculating how many witnesses were watching. The gym had gone quiet. 20 pairs of eyes focused on our domestic drama. "We should discuss this at home," she said through gritted teeth. "Should we?" I threw a practice jab at the air, muscles warming up. "Like we discussed your late nights at the office? Or your new fitness routine with Brooks?" Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Room 237, Riverside Inn. Ring any bells?" The silence stretched between us like a loaded spring. Seren's composure cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Whatever you think you know, I know you've been screwing Brooks Carvin for 3 months. I know you used our joint account to pay for hotels. I know you think I'm too ordinary to fight back." The last part hit home. Serene's mask slipped completely, showing the cold calculation beneath. "You can't prove anything," she whispered. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of her text conversation with Brooks. Her eyes widened as she read her own words. "Porter's so trusting. Almost feel bad for the guy." "Wanna bet?" Serene grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. Around us, the gym had returned to its normal rhythm, but I could feel Murphy watching from the corner of his eye. "What do you want?" she asked. "Justice." "How much?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. She was trying to buy her way out, just like her family had bought their way out of every problem. "You think this is about money?" "Everything's about money, Porter. Name your price." I unwrapped my hands slowly, each loop of tape falling to the floor. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't a business transaction. This is a reckoning." Serene's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, probably her father's office. "This isn't over," she said, backing toward the exit. "No," I agreed. "It's just getting started." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely contained fury. Murphy walked over, shaking his head. "That woman's got ice water in her veins," he said. "Had," I corrected. "Now she's got panic." That evening, I sat in my truck outside Elite Fitness, waiting. Brooks emerged at closing time, looking over his shoulder like a man expecting trouble. His red Corvette was parked under a streetlight, the missing mirror replaced with duct tape. I followed him to his apartment complex, a trendy development called Harbor View, despite being nowhere near water. Brooks lived in Unit 3B, a fact I'd learned from Seren's text messages. I parked across the street and opened my laptop, connecting to the building's unsecured Wi-Fi network. Amazing how many people never bothered to password protect their internet. Brooks's social media profiles painted a picture of a man desperately trying to convince the world he was successful. Expensive clothes, fancy restaurants, exotic vacations, all financed by training wealthy housewives and whatever side hustles he could manage. I found his Spotify account and created a new playlist. Seren's greatest hits. Every song she'd mentioned loving during our 6 years together. Every melody that reminded me of better times. At 3 a.m., I drove back to Harbor View with a portable speaker system I'd borrowed from Murphy's gym. The kind they used for outdoor events, powerful enough to wake the entire complex. I set up in the parking lot and hit play. The opening notes of Unchained Melody echoed off the brick buildings, followed by At Last and The Way You Look Tonight. Every romantic song Seren had ever hummed while cooking dinner or getting ready for date nights. Lights started coming on in windows. Brooks appeared on his balcony in boxer shorts, hair sticking up like an angry rooster. "Hey!" he shouted. "Turn that off!" I waved from beside my truck, then hit the button for Brooks's car alarm. The Corvette's horn joined the musical chaos, creating a symphony of suburban disruption. By the time the police arrived, I was gone. But not before spray painting "Homewrecker" on Brooks's door in bright red letters. The best part? I'd been on camera at Murphy's gym from 2:30 to 3:30 a.m., using my key to get in for a late-night workout. The security footage would show me hitting the heavy bag while someone else was vandalizing Brooks's apartment. Amazing what you can accomplish with a little planning and a friend who doesn't ask too many questions. My phone buzzed as I drove home. A text from an unknown number. "Nice work tonight, but you're playing with fire." I stared at the message, mind racing. Someone else was watching, someone who knew what I'd done. The game was getting more complicated, and I was just getting started. The text came from Jennifer Walsh, Seren's best friend and maid of honor at our wedding. I should have seen that coming. Jennifer had always been the puppet master in their social circle, pulling strings from behind her perfect smile. We met at Rosie's Diner, a greasy spoon on the wrong side of town where neither of our usual crowds would venture. Jennifer looked out of place among the truckers and third-shift workers, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. "You've made your point, Porter," she said, sliding into the cracked vinyl booth across from me. "Now let's talk like adults." I stirred sugar into my coffee, taking my time. I wasn't aware we had anything to discuss. "Seren's my oldest friend. I can't stand by and watch you destroy her." Funny. I felt the same way when she was destroying our marriage. Jennifer's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Marriage? Porter, you were a phase. A rebellion against her family's expectations. She was always going to outgrow you." The words stung because part of me had always suspected they were true. Seren had married down, and everyone knew it. "So why are you here?" I asked. "Because this can still end quietly. Seren's willing to be generous in the divorce settlement. You walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else." "And Brooks?" Jennifer's composure slipped for just a moment. "What about him? Does he get the same deal? Or is he just collateral damage in Seren's midlife crisis?" "Brooks is..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Brooks is complicated. Interesting." I filed that information away and leaned back in the booth. "Tell Seren I'm not interested in her money. I want what's mine by law. The prenup works both ways. Your friend should have thought about that before she started her affair." Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "We'll see about that." After she left, I sat in the diner for another hour, thinking. Jennifer's reaction to Brooks's name had been telling. There was more to this story, layers I hadn't uncovered yet. That afternoon, I drove to Seren's office building downtown. The Trenwall Legal Group occupied 3 floors of a glass tower that screamed money and power. I'd only been inside once, for a Christmas party where I'd felt like a zoo animal on display. I parked across the street and waited. At 5:30, Seren emerged with her father, William Trenwall. Even at 65, he carried himself like a man who'd never lost a fight that mattered. They stood on the sidewalk, having what looked like an intense conversation. William handed her a manila envelope, patted her shoulder, and walked to his Mercedes. Seren stood alone for a moment, looking smaller, somehow. Vulnerable. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone rang. Soren Valden. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Trenwall's filing a motion to invalidate the prenup. Claims it was signed under duress." "Can they do that?" "They can try. But Porter, there's something else. Someone's been asking questions about you, about your finances, your background, any skeletons in your closet." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest they're building a counterattack. Be careful." I hung up and watched Seren climb into her BMW. As she drove past, our eyes met through the windshield. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd married, scared, alone, in over her head. Then the moment passed, and she was gone. That night, I received an unexpected visitor. Helena Trenwall, Seren's mother, stood on my doorstep like an avenging angel in Chanel. At 58, she was still beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that rich women cultivate like a weapon. "May I come in?" she asked, though she was already stepping past me into the living room. Helena surveyed our modest home with the eye of an appraiser, taking in the second-hand furniture and do-it-yourself repairs. Her expression never changed, but I could feel her judgment like a physical weight. "Drink?" I offered. "I don't think this will take long." She perched on the edge of our couch like a bird ready to take flight. "You're destroying my daughter." "Your daughter destroyed herself. I'm just documenting the process." Seren made a mistake. She's young, confused. She's 31 years old and a practicing attorney. She knew exactly what she was doing. Helena's mask slipped, revealing the steel underneath. "What do you want, Porter? Really? Because we both know this isn't about justice or wounded pride. You want to hurt us." She wasn't wrong. 6 years of condescending smiles and backhanded compliments had left their mark. 6 years of being treated like the help at family gatherings. "I want what your husband promised me in that prenup," I said. "Equal treatment under the law. William designed that agreement to protect our family's assets. From gold diggers like me?" Helena stood, smoothing her skirt. "You're not a gold digger, Porter. You're something worse. You're a man with nothing left to lose." After she left, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my garage, surrounded by the tools and projects that had always made sense to me. Cars didn't lie. Engines didn't cheat. Fix what's broken, replace what's worn out, and everything runs smooth. If only marriages were that simple. My laptop chimed with a new email. The sender was anonymous, but the subject line made my stomach drop. "You're not the only one with secrets." The message contained a single attachment, a photo of me leaving Jennifer's apartment building 6 months ago. I remembered that day. Seren had asked me to drop off some legal documents while Jennifer was out of town, but the timestamp on the photo was wrong. It showed me leaving at 11 p.m., not 2 p.m. when I'd actually been there. Someone was building a case against me. Someone with the resources to doctor evidence and the motivation to destroy my credibility. I stared at the photo, mind racing. The game had just changed, and I was no longer the only player with ammunition. Time to find out who else wanted to see Seren Kellor fall. The revelation came from an unexpected source. Brooks Carvin himself. I found him at Murphy's gym the next morning, looking like a man who'd been awake for days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his designer workout clothes were wrinkled. "We need to talk," he said, approaching my bench press station. I set down the barbell and sat up, studying his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. About what? About Jennifer Walsh. About what's really happening here. We moved to Murphy's office, a cramped space behind the main gym floor. Brooks paced like a caged animal while I leaned against the desk. "Jennifer's been playing all of us," he said. "Seren, you, me. We're all just pieces on her chessboard." "Explain." Brooks ran his hands through his hair. 3 years ago, Jennifer worked for your father-in-law, junior associate, climbing the ladder. Then she got caught embezzling client funds. Small amounts, but enough to destroy her career. Helena mentioned Jennifer had worked for the firm. Helena fired her personally, made sure she'd never work in law again. Jennifer's been planning revenge ever since. The pieces started clicking together. She orchestrated Seren's affair? More than that. She seduced me first, got me wrapped around her finger. Then she introduced me to Seren, suggested I target her for personal training. Jennifer coached me through every step, what to say, how to act, when to make my move. I thought about Jennifer's reaction at the diner when I'd mentioned Brooks. The careful way she'd chosen her words. "You're sleeping with both of them." Brooks nodded miserably. Jennifer said it was temporary, just until Seren's marriage imploded and the family was destroyed. Then we'd disappear together with whatever money we could grab. But you caught feelings. For Seren, yeah, which wasn't part of Jennifer's plan. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." For the next hour, Brooks laid out the entire conspiracy. Jennifer's seduction, her careful manipulation of Seren's insecurities, The staged encounters that led to the affair, even the anonymous email I'd received. Jennifer had hired a private investigator to build leverage against me. "She's got dirt on everyone," Brooks said. "Your wife, her parents, even you. She's been collecting ammunition for 3 years." "What kind of dirt?" "Helena's been skimming from the firm's charity accounts. Small amounts, but consistent. William's been hiding assets offshore to avoid taxes. And Seren—" He paused. "What about Seren?" "She's been running a fake charity, collecting donations for legal aid, then funneling the money into her personal accounts. Jennifer helped her set it up, said it was just creative accounting. My wife wasn't just an adulterer, she was a thief. The woman who'd lectured me about moral responsibility was stealing from people who needed help." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Jennifer's done with me. She's moving to the final phase of her plan, and I'm expendable. She's going to frame me for everything. The affair, the embezzlement, maybe even some crimes I didn't commit." Brooks pulled out his phone and showed me a text thread with Jennifer. The messages were cold, calculating, discussing him like a problem to be solved rather than a person. "She wants to meet tonight, says she has a solution for our situation." He looked up at me with desperate eyes. "I'm scared, man. Really scared." I studied Brooks Carvin, the pretty boy who'd helped destroy my marriage, now revealed as another victim of Jennifer's manipulation. Part of me wanted to let him burn, but a bigger part recognized a fellow pawn in Jennifer's game. "What do you want from me?" "Help. Protection. I don't know." He slumped in his chair. "I just want this to be over." I thought about the anonymous email, the doctored photo, the careful way Jennifer had approached me at the diner. She'd been playing a longer game than any of us realized. "Where are you meeting her?" "The old lakeside cabin outside town, her family's place." I knew the location, a secluded property where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear into deep water. Jennifer wasn't planning a conversation. "Don't go," I said. "If I don't show, she'll destroy me anyway. At least this way, I might have a chance to reason with her." I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. "I'll be there, hidden, recording everything. If things go bad, I'll intervene." Brooks stared at me. "Why would you help me?" "Because Jennifer Walsh needs to pay for what she's done. To all of us." That afternoon, I drove to the lakeside cabin and scouted the area. The property was isolated, surrounded by thick woods and accessible only by a single dirt road, perfect for Jennifer's purposes. I found a hiding spot in the trees with a clear view of the cabin's main room. My phone had a decent camera, and Murphy had loaned me a directional microphone he used for recording training sessions. As the sun set over the lake, I settled in to wait. Whatever Jennifer had planned for tonight, she was about to learn that Porter Kellor was done being a pawn in other people's games. The ordinary mechanic was about to become something else entirely, something dangerous. Jennifer arrived first, driving a black SUV with tinted windows. She moved with purpose, unlocking the cabin and setting up what looked like a laptop and camera equipment. Whatever she had planned, she wanted it documented. Brooks pulled up 20 minutes later in his damaged Corvette, the duct-taped mirror catching the last rays of sunlight. He sat in his car for a long moment before walking to the cabin door. Through my directional microphone, I heard their conversation clearly. "You look terrible," Jennifer said as Brooks entered. "Thanks, real confidence booster. Sit down, we need to discuss your future." I adjusted my phone's camera, making sure I had a clear shot through the cabin's main window. Jennifer looked different here, colder, more predatory. The mask of concerned friendship had been completely discarded. "Porter Kellor knows about us," Brooks said, settling into a wooden chair. "I'm aware. He's been more resourceful than expected. He has evidence, photos, recordings, everything." Jennifer smiled, and the expression sent chills down my spine. "Evidence can be discredited, especially when it comes from a man having a nervous breakdown." She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward Brooks. I couldn't see what she was showing him, but his face went pale. "What is this?" "Your suicide note. Very touching, really. Guilt over the affair, remorse for destroying a marriage, shame over your financial crimes." "Financial crimes?" "The money you've been embezzling from the gym. Small amounts, but consistent. Amazing how easy it is to plant evidence when you have the right connections." Brooks stood up abruptly. "I never stole anything." "Try proving that when your body is found in the lake tomorrow morning." The words hit me like a physical blow. Jennifer wasn't just planning to frame Brooks. She was planning to eliminate him entirely. "You're insane," Brooks said, backing toward the door. "I'm thorough." Jennifer pulled a small pistol from her purse. "Sit down, Brooks. We're not finished." I had to move. Whatever happened next, I couldn't let Jennifer commit a crime that would destroy us all. I crept closer to the cabin, phone still recording. "This was never about revenge against the Trenwalls," Brooks said, his voice shaking. "This is about you being a psychopath." "The Trenwalls destroyed my career, my reputation, my entire life. Helena Trenwall stood in that conference room and called me a thief in front of everyone I respected. She made sure I'd never practice law again." "So, you became an actual criminal instead?" Jennifer's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I became what they said I was, and now I'm going to take everything they love and burn it to the ground." "What about Seren? I thought you were friends." "Seren was always the princess, protected by Mommy and Daddy's money. She never had to work for anything, never faced real consequences. It'll be poetic justice when she loses everything. Her marriage, her reputation, her freedom." "Freedom?" "The charity fraud will come to light during the divorce proceedings. Seren will go to prison and the Trenwall family name will be ruined forever." I was close enough now to see inside the cabin clearly. Jennifer had the gun trained on Brooks, who sat frozen in his chair. The laptop screen showed what looked like financial records, probably the fabricated evidence she'd mentioned. "And me?" Brooks asked. "You're the tragic figure who couldn't live with the guilt. Very sympathetic, really. The local papers will eat it up." Jennifer moved behind Brooks's chair, pressing the gun to the base of his skull. "Don't worry, it'll be quick." I burst through the cabin door, phone held high. "Jennifer Walsh, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted homicide." Both of them froze. Jennifer's gun wavered as she stared at me. "Porter? What are you doing here?" "Recording your confession." I held up my phone. "Every word, Jennifer. The embezzlement frame-up, the murder plot, your revenge scheme against the Trenwalls, all of it." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I hit the playback button, and Jennifer's voice filled the cabin. "I'm going to take everything they love and burn it to the ground." Her face went white. "Give me that phone." "No." Jennifer swung the gun toward me, and Brooks took his chance. He lunged from his chair, grabbing her wrist and forcing the weapon toward the ceiling. It discharged with a deafening crack, sending splinters of wood raining down. I tackled Jennifer from behind, driving her to the floor. The gun skittered across the wooden planks as we struggled. She was stronger than I'd expected, fueled by desperation and rage. "You ruined everything!" she screamed, clawing at my face. Brooks grabbed the pistol and pointed it at both of us. "Enough!" Jennifer and I separated, breathing hard. She glared at me with pure hatred. "This doesn't change anything," she said. "I still have enough evidence to destroy your wife and her family." "No," I said, pulling out my phone again. "You had leverage. Past tense." I showed her the screen, a text message I'd sent to Seren Valden 20 minutes earlier, along with the audio files from tonight's confrontation. "My attorney is already filing charges. Conspiracy, extortion, attempted murder. The FBI takes interstate fraud very seriously, especially when it involves fake charities." Jennifer's composure finally cracked. She slumped against the wall, looking suddenly small and defeated. "They destroyed my life first," she whispered. So you decided to destroy everyone else's, including people who never hurt you. Brooks lowered the gun, his hands shaking. What happens now? Now we call the police and let justice take its course. As we waited for the authorities to arrive, I thought about the chain of events that had brought us to this cabin. Seren's affair, my quest for revenge, Jennifer's elaborate scheme, all of it spiraling out of control until someone almost ended up in the lake. But it wasn't over yet. I still had a marriage to end and a wife to confront. Jennifer's revelations about the charity fraud had given me new ammunition, but they'd also complicated everything. Seren wasn't just an adulterer anymore. She was a criminal, and I was the only one who could decide whether to save her or watch her burn. The choice would define what kind of man I really was. The Harvest Festival was Millbrook's biggest social event of the year, held in the town square with local politicians, business leaders, and anyone who mattered in our small corner of the world. Seren had been planning to attend for months, seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild her reputation after our very public marital troubles. She had no idea I'd be there too. I arrived early, setting up near the main stage where the mayor would give his annual address. The crowd was already substantial, families with children, elderly couples, teenagers trying to look bored, perfect witnesses for what I had planned. Seren appeared at 7 p.m. sharp, wearing a navy blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting condolences about our difficult situation with practiced grace. William and Helena flanked her like bodyguards, their faces set in expressions of dignified concern. To anyone watching, they looked like a family weathering a storm with quiet strength. They had no idea the hurricane was about to make landfall. I waited until the mayor finished his speech, and the crowd began to disperse toward the food trucks and carnival games. Then I stepped up to the microphone, tapping it twice to get everyone's attention. "Excuse me, folks. Sorry to interrupt your evening, but I have something important to share." Conversations died as hundreds of faces turned toward the stage. I spotted Seren in the crowd, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she realized what was happening. "My name is Porter Kellor, and 3 weeks ago, I discovered my wife was having an affair." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was better than cable television. Real drama happening right in their backyard. Now I know what you're thinking. Marital problems are private matters, best handled behind closed doors. And normally, I'd agree with you. I pulled out a stack of papers, copies of the evidence I'd compiled, along with Jennifer's confession from the cabin. But when that affair is funded with stolen charity money, it becomes everyone's business. The murmur became a roar. I saw Seren pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the stage, but there were too many people between us. Seren Kellor, my soon-to-be ex-wife, has been running a fake charity called Legal Aid for All. She's collected over $50,000 in donations from good people who wanted to help those in need. I held up bank statements showing the money flowing into Seren's personal accounts. Instead, she used your donations to finance hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for her lover, Brooks Carvin. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Where's the money now?" "Gone. Spent on a lifestyle my wife felt she deserved." I looked directly at Seren, who had stopped trying to reach the stage and was standing frozen in the middle of the crowd. But that's not the worst part. The silence was absolute now. Even the children had stopped talking. The worst part is that when I discovered the affair, Seren's best friend Jennifer Walsh tried to have me framed for embezzlement. When that failed, she attempted to commit actual homicide to cover up the conspiracy. I played a snippet of Jennifer's recorded confession through the sound system. Her voice, cold and calculating, discussing murder like a business transaction. The crowd erupted. People were shouting questions, demanding answers, pulling out phones to record everything. In the chaos, I saw Helena Trenwall grab her daughter's arm and start pulling her toward the parking lot. The FBI has all the evidence, I continued, my voice cutting through the noise. Bank records, recorded confessions, documented proof of charity fraud spanning 3 years. Justice will be served. William Trenwall broke away from his family and stormed toward the stage. His face was purple with rage, his carefully maintained composure completely shattered. "You son of a—" He caught himself before finishing the curse, remembering where he was. "This is slander, lies and fabrication. Is it?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "Your daughter's bank records, her text messages, Jennifer Walsh's full confession. Which part is fabricated, William?" The crowd pressed closer, sensing an opportunity. Someone began chanting, "Show us the proof!" Others joined in until the entire square rang with calls for evidence. I handed the microphone to Mayor Davidson, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "The proof is with the FBI," I announced, along with evidence of the Trenwall family's other financial irregularities. Offshore accounts, charity fund skimming, tax evasion. "That's enough!" Helena's voice cut across the square like a whip. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her perfect composure finally cracked. "You want to destroy us? Fine, but you're destroying yourself too." She was right, and I knew it. This public revelation would make me a pariah in certain circles, unemployable at any firm connected to the Trenwalls. But I'd passed the point of caring about consequences. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll be able to sleep at night." The crowd began to disperse, breaking into smaller groups to dissect what they'd just witnessed. I saw Seren standing alone near the carousel, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. Then I remembered the text messages, the casual cruelty, the way she'd looked at me like something she'd scraped off her shoe. The moment passed. I climbed down from the stage and walked to my truck, ignoring the reporters who were already arriving. By tomorrow morning, the story would be in every newspaper within 100 miles. The Trenwall family's reputation, built over 3 generations, would be in ruins. My phone buzzed with a text from Soren Valden. "Beautifully executed. The FBI wants to meet tomorrow morning." Another message, this one from an unknown number. "You got your revenge. I hope it was worth it." I looked back at the festival grounds, where the Trenwall family was huddled near their cars like refugees from a war zone. Seren was still crying, her mother's arm around her shoulders. William was on his phone, probably calling every favor he was owed. They looked smaller now, human, vulnerable. Had it been worth it? The question would haunt me for years to come. But tonight, sitting in my truck as the first snow of winter began to fall, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The ordinary mechanic had won his war against the elite. The underdog had brought down the giants. And Porter Kellor was finally free. I drove home through the empty streets, past the houses where my neighbors were probably already spreading the news. By morning, everyone in Millbrook would know the truth about the Trenwall family, the truth about my wife, the truth about me. I parked in my driveway and sat in the darkness, listening to the snow tap against my windshield. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and reporters and consequences I couldn't predict. But tonight belonged to me. I'd kept my promise to myself. Justice had been served. The rest was just paperwork.